All right, we're going to move tack slightly. We're going to look at life sciences, new frontiers for high growth investment. Our next panel is going to look at this sector, a rapidly evolving space where data, biology, and diagnostics converge to create transformative investment potential. We have an esteemed panel for this session. Please welcome our moderator, Dr. Anula Jayasuriya, the founding managing partner at Kidron Capital, and her panelists to the stage.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are going to take a different tack. Earlier, you've heard a lot about blockchain, about fintech, cybersecurity, cyber warfare, all kinds of things to do with tech, and more tech. We are here going to focus on the human, on life sciences and health, and think about how all of tech can advance our lives until AI replaces us. So that is and AI, I forgot to really mention, that's a big part of it as well. So that is the focus of our panel today. I am here in place of my partner, Maria, who actually conceived of this panel and put everything together. She's unfortunately in Tel Aviv and cannot travel. The same goes for Ilya, who was not able to be here because he is also in Tel Aviv. But Sophie has graciously stepped in and taken Ilya's place. So we have a few changes on this process on the panel, and we're delighted again that you're here. So the way we will do this is I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves, and then we will pose questions and have a discussion, a pretty informal one. I don't think we're going to have time for questions, but if you do have questions, and I hope you have questions, I think you can find us at the end of the panel. So without further ado, we have two Nicolas on the panel. So may I invite Nicola Blackwood to introduce herself, and then Nicola Hodson, and then Sophie Valentine. Nicola 1.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very impressed that you're all here still on this melting day. So I chair Genomics England, having exited 20 years in government and politics, where I was, amongst other things, chair of the Science and Technology Select Committee in the House of Commons and Life Sciences Minister under 2 Prime Ministers. At Genomics England, we are creating the National Clinical Genomics Dataset, which is globally competitive, and we enable national whole genome sequencing for rare disease and cancer patients at the moment. But in our frontier work, we are sequencing newborns to end the diagnostic odyssey and working on a lifelong relationship with the genome, which will completely transform the healthcare setting that we have in the UK and hopefully address some of the challenges that we face. In other work, I am on the board of BioNTech, one of the most forward-looking biotechs in the world at the moment, and also help spin out IP from Oxford.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Hodson. I chair IBM in the UK and Ireland. I work with IBM across a range of topics in healthcare, including things like our omics models, auto-omics for AI in healthcare. We are working on those as a range of foundation models. We are also doing work with quantum to speed up drug discovery and diagnostics, and then some work with agentic AI, largely to speed up productivity across the healthcare sector. I'm also on the board of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology here in the UK, and a group called Tech UK, which represents the tech industry. Delighted to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here as a last-minute step-in. My name is Sophie Valentine. I'm product lead at Anira Health. Anira Health is a women's healthcare organization, and our mission is ultimately to finally get women's health right for the 51% of the population who have been so underserved for such a long time. We're starting very much with women's health conditions, so menopause, fertility, contraception, but we're very much making our way across to the health of women's sector, so any healthcare condition that would happen to exist within a woman's body or mind. How we do it, and this very much speaks to my role, is we are very thoughtful about the technologies that we introduce to improve the sustainability, the accessibility, the sort of quality and the safety of the care that we deliver. Digital is a huge part of that, AI is a huge part of that, but we're also interested in other technologies such as novel therapeutics and genomics as well. So thank you for having me.
What I see represented here is the interplay between healthcare and tech. And I would like each of you to discuss how your individual areas fashion this change, this very, very exciting fusion of these two big forces in our economy coming together to make it much more attractive and even more powerful. I'd love you to start, Baroness, about Genome England, the biobank in England and UK rather. And this is something that everybody in the US wishes we had, together with the NHS. We all wish we had the NHS as well. I live in the US. And so if you could talk about how the genomics analysis has helped very much drive healthcare in the UK and the powerful data that you have at your disposal because of this data bank.
So Genomics England started as a research project. It was to prove that clinical genomics could really change the dynamics of healthcare, which are desperately needed. We know that health inflation runs at about 6%, and overall, most investment runs at about 2 to 3 worldwide. And even where investment runs ahead of it, because we're not targeting individuals with preventative, personalized, and really effective programmatic healthcare, all health systems around the world are ineffective. And so what we found with the 100,000 was that even if we just targeted rare disease and cancers, we had far more effective outcomes for patients, but we also saved health systems money. And so during the pandemic, believe it or not, we then rolled out the Genomics Medicine Service, which is where we have a national right, free of charge, for rare disease and cancer patients to be whole genome sequenced. And this means that we're abolishing the diagnostic odyssey, which means on average it takes a rare disease patient 67 appointments over 75 months to be diagnosed. You can imagine the cost of that, and you can imagine the agony of that for patients and for their families. Most rare disease patients are children. And of course, with cancers, you can have much more targeted treatments, which reduces side effects, adverse effects, and it also improves outcomes. This is saving health systems money, and it's improving the outcomes for patients. But the best bit of this is that over 95% of those patients, they consent for that data to be used for research. And so that data is held in what we call the National Genomics Library. And in that library, researchers from around the world, but also industry partners, 7 out of 10 major pharmas by market cap, research in that data set to improve diagnostics and therapeutics. And then we drive that discovery straight back into the clinic to improve healthcare for the NHS, but also for patients globally. It really is a sovereign national asset. And we go beyond that with the UK Biobank, which is a cohort study, and with Our Future Health, where we're recruiting 5 million with common diseases. And we join that data all together, and the UK has one of the best genomic assets in the world for patients in clinic, but also for discovery and driving forward the frontiers of healthcare.
The envy of much of the world.
Well, we also work with other countries to see if this can be embedded in other countries. We're talking to the Middle East, we're talking to Singapore, we talk to Europe, and this is moving. This is a very fast-moving environment and a great opportunity and a context to understand the next phases of therapeutics and diagnostics, because they're built on this foundational infrastructure.
Hold the concept of personalized medicine, because we're going to come back to that. And so, Dr. Hodson, if you might talk about the tech world, and IBM and your former affiliation, Microsoft, both have health plays. How do you envision the role of tech in healthcare, and also maybe link into some of what Baroness Blackwood has been talking about?
Yeah, look, I think it's best to talk about it in terms of some examples, because our play is very much to provide the tech to support the healthcare sector to improve what it does. So I'd like to talk about some of the work we're doing in research, and then a couple of commercial examples, and maybe just some examples of productivity, where we see that really taking effect in the NHS. And then we should talk a little bit more around data and how we use data to provide better services, because I love what you talked about, and I think there are some challenges there too. So IBM, for example, started a partnership in 2021 with the STFC, Skills Technology Funding Council for the UK, and that's a partnership called the Hartree Centre. It's based up in Daresbury. We co-located our researchers there, and it's a combination of cloud, AI, quantum, high-performance compute, so pulling all of that technology together. Its ethos was to create jobs, to support startups in the local economy, and they've created around 2,000 jobs, hundreds of startups, many of them in healthcare and quantum. But they do some really, really interesting research. So I thought I'd just give you a couple of examples. The first one, and it's oftentimes with the NHS or small companies. The first one I wanted to share was using quantum computing and AI to differentiate between different breast cancer subtypes. That's been a piece of research with Brompton and Harefield Hospitals, Imperial College and Warwick University. And by analysing whole slide images, that project on its own has made the process about 25 times faster to discovery. Ultimately, faster discovery leads to faster treatment, so some significant advantages there. The second one I wanted to share is with a small company called ReproCell, where we have been looking at how to improve clinical trials to get drugs to market faster. 9 out of 10 clinical trials fail. They don't reach the market because the trials are oftentimes quite broad, and so there's a failure relating just to a particular subset of patients. So if you can isolate some of the factors like genetics, environment, behavior, to make sure that you're looking at smaller subsets of patients and more accurate trials, then you can improve that process. So we created with them something called Pharmacology AI, and it's an application that gives insights for precision medicine. It uses our Autoomics tool, which is a bespoke foundation model, and again sort of provides analysis very quickly of super large data sets to improve the clinical trials outcomes. Another in the commercial world is with Roche. We recently launched an app with them which links with diabetes monitoring, measures blood sugar for hypo and hypoglycemic events. One of the things it does, for example, is it uses AI to check over a 7-hour sleep cycle whether there's a possibility or a probability of a glycemic event. It gives then the patient the option to have a snack before bedtime if things look low. So lots of peace of mind benefits, and again, very, very new. Just on the productivity side, don't want to go beyond that because it's important for all of the companies we work with and the NHS. There are very, very significant productivity gains possible. So to give a few simple examples, outpatient wait lists, I think, are a problem in many countries, specifically a problem for the NHS here. Just using simple process mining and a very simple Gen AI tool, we've been able to save 6% with the trust in Coventry and Warwickshire. This doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 700 extra hours with doctors and patients a week. And they're able to scan in 18 hours a set of letters that would previously have taken them 4 years. So significant. If you scale that across the country, big numbers are possible. Simple AI bots and agents across HR systems. One hospital saved 33,000 hours. Another one has been able to not replace 8 headcount in HR, but put them back into frontline nursing. So there are all sorts of possibilities just on basic productivity with AI as well that I think will improve the clinical frontline as we speed up in the back office.
Wonderful. Before, Sophie, before you talk about Anura and introduce yourself, I just want to take a minute to talk about what women's health means to me, and I hope will also mean to you after this discussion. So traditionally, women's health has been reproductive health, and it's only been basically the organs that are different between men and women. The holistic definition of women's health includes, yes, the reproductive organs, but then beyond that, conditions that are different in men and women. Examples are cardiac disease, for example, presents differently between men and women. And there are many other examples, but let me just keep going. Also, the third area is the area that's predominant in women and hugely predominant. For example, most autoimmune diseases are in women over men. And so we're getting more and more information that there are fundamental biological differences driving these disease-based differences that we see. And so women's health is really a very large opportunity and is at the frontier of science, because we are pushing all kinds of frontiers in this learning of women's health. And McKinsey's report that they presented at Davos put women's health at a $3 trillion underappreciated market. This is the context in which I would love, Sophie, to introduce yourself and also talk about Anura.
Yes, yeah, delighted to, and thank you so much for the introduction to women's health. I think there are so many different ways to look at it, so many statistics you can bring out. So I'm slightly new to women's health, but I have been a woman for a little while now. And so learning, outside of my own personal experience with healthcare systems, what it means to deliver effective women's healthcare is really interesting. And as you say, I think, and I hope I've got my stats right, but I think historically 1% of R&D spending has gone within the healthcare space has gone to women-specific conditions. In 2023, 2% of investment in digital health was focused on women's health. And it doesn't help, I hope the stat is still contemporary, that only 2% of VCs are women. But there is a massive opportunity there. We know that women are in control of 80% of the healthcare spend in the US. We also know that women spend themselves about 30% more on their own healthcare, which really kind of tells you the role that women, both in terms of sort of taking care of their own health, but also taking care of the health of their families, the influence that women's health and women in health play within the sector. So going back to the question of what is the role that technology specifically plays, I think a really interesting piece is what we can do with technology to counteract the women's health research gap. There's a lot that we don't know about women's health. I think I'm right in saying that it was in my lifetime that the first regulation was introduced that mandated that women should be included in clinical trials with the FDA, which is absolutely well to think about. The first study of how the brain changes across a menstrual cycle came out in 2024. So we really do need to start to think about how we can close this gap. And of course, it's the research that leads into innovation, that leads into better treatments, that leads into better outcomes for patients. So we're really keen at Anura to be a big part of that innovation ecosystem. We've got a big sort of genomics influence. We baseline every woman that comes in, which is that we take blood tests, and we bring all of that data together to support the research ecosystem, which in however many decades it will be, will trickle down into better innovations for the members of Anura, but women globally. We're also very thoughtful about how we can introduce technology day to day in supporting effective delivery of care. I love a lot of the points that you introduced around, we have these kind of clinical applications. In women's health, this might be, again, overcoming what we don't know about menopause by gathering lots of information about perimenopausal symptoms on a daily basis and feeding that into an algorithm that can be used to identify perimenopause early and start getting women the support they need. And to sort of counteract the horror stories you hear about women who've had surgery on their shoulders because their doctor simply didn't know that the frozen shoulder was a really common symptom of menopause. We're also really interested in the back office functions, whether that's supporting the way that we sort of structure and store our data. We use a lot of sort of ambient listening technologies so that our clinicians can really truly focus on the patient that's sitting in front of them rather than sort of being split. I'm listening to you, but I'm not because I'm typing my notes. So I think it's interesting. For me, the major question is thoughtfully introducing technology. I think digital health, and women's health is no exception, has had certainly a boom. Certainly COVID played a big role in this. And lots of interesting, sexy clinical technologies came out that actually don't have a lot of value. They don't offer support in terms of making services sustainable. And so for us, first and foremost, we are innovation-minded, but we're incredibly thoughtful about where and why we introduce innovation to truly support our women and to support the sustainability of our business.
And you have a digitally enabled care model around women.
Yes,
that's
exactly
fair.
Right. Yes, that's exactly right. So we're, and back to the point of the role that women play in society, women are very busy. So something really basic that we do is you can have a video appointment. If you can't come into the clinic, we're going to make it sort of viable and effective for you to have an appointment on video. We're going to make it viable and effective to text with your clinician. We're going to make your test results not only available, but accessible and understandable using digital technologies. And all of these things, it's very interesting speaking with the younger generations, and they go, of course I can text my doctor. What are you talking about? Well, you can't. And so for us, we're in an incredibly privileged position to, come with a mindset as we build our business to think about what are the sort of digitized care models or the alternative care models that we can introduce from day dot, and the innovation mindedness we can carry forward with us to make sure that we're effective in the care we deliver.
On that point, Dr. Hodgson, could you just talk a little bit about privacy in healthcare, which is a big issue, and how that is going to be not present a hurdle to advancement?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think everything Sophie and Nicola talked about, you very much rely on good data being able to be brought together around the individual, and that's one of the big challenges that we have as a society. As it relates to privacy and ethics, most organizations, and IBM is one of them, have put in place an ethics board or an ethics committee to look at how they use AI and put the right guardrails in place. Ordinarily, anyone on an ethics committee can say no, and it only takes one vote on ours for something to be stopped. And, that might be someone from a female or it might be someone who represents different backgrounds. So you can look at all of the angles of what you're doing. Most organizations also are building ethical principles. Again, the tech industry, IBM included, will offer those principles to customers to take up and use. And then you can look at technology to put the right guardrails in place. So there is technology that governs AI models. What you want to make sure is that the AI models are transparent. You can see why the decision's made, which pieces of metadata were taken to take a decision, especially if it's something critical like health or financial services, as you were just hearing. So to be able to track and trace that data, you can put your relevant local regulations into those models, and the AI, when you're prompting it, will flag if it's off-piste with the regulations. So being able to govern that in a safe and effective way is important. When you think about agents, we anticipate around 1 billion AI-based apps are going to be developed over the next few years. That is a lot of things to govern on top of what's already there. So the ability to manage and govern AI agents, because every software vendor right now is building agents. I'm sure you will be building agents as well, probably in your world as well, Nicola. Being able to have all of those agents talk to each other and know what handoffs are being made and how you manage ethics, responsibility, and transparency across those. So super important. I think regulators are taking slightly different approaches. My view is what we're doing here in the UK, which is regulating by sector, is proving to be effective because it's allowing all of the innovation that you're hearing about today, and at the same time protecting patients' data. I would say the weak spot, if I look at the UK, is how do you get the data from your doctor? 33 million people are using the NHS app, which is half-ish of the population, more than half. It's got lots of my data, but it also doesn't have a lot of my data. It's not searchable. I can't integrate it with my personal health. I can't integrate it with an appointment with you right now. I can't integrate it with my genome right now, or maybe I can and I don't know about it. But being able to pull all that together around an individual, I think, is probably the major challenge we've got in terms of accelerating the pace.
Nicola B. Just a quick question about the genomics data. Is it representative of the UK population? Do you have the same, approximately the same ethnicities, the same gender split and so forth?
Yes, so we've gone through a period of prioritizing, diversifying the data set. This is obviously the right thing to ensure that we have morally the right response to the UK, but it's also scientifically important to make sure that we can have the right analyses to queue up the variants in the right way. But I wanted to just follow up on a couple of the points that came out in terms of risk factors, in terms of investing in biotech and biopharma right now. You're right that historically only kind of 1 in 10 clinical trials made it through. But what we're seeing at the moment are some really significant trends. Firstly, significant de-risking by AI identifying targets. Secondly, genomic data has been found to support that trend as well. So we're now up to 4 in 10 and driving fast. This is super important for 2 reasons. One is it increases certainty for investors. Secondly, it reduces the cost from the beginning to the end of the clinical trial process. This is why companies like BioNTech have the confidence to invest in the last 2 weeks, 1 billion into the UK for a 23,000 trial across the NHS with 100 partner hospitals across the UK, and they've done a 11 billion deal with BMS in order to ensure that we can get one of our products to market quicker. It'll be a competitor for Keytruda, which was a massive blockbuster. We're seeing absolute record numbers of approvals through the FDA. These have tripled since the 2000s, from 20 approvals to 61 last year, 50 this year. There is an enormous amount of activity in the innovation space, but what we are seeing now is that this is accelerating because of the availability of the genomics data, the AI data, and what you have said is absolutely right, that we're at this kind of turning point when it will be even more targeted and available, and the barrier is getting this to patients, which the other element that we're seeing in the trend is huge investments from government to make sure that that happens because they see the tide coming. So it's actually a really exciting moment.
Absolutely, very exciting. I just wanted to tell you why I asked about the database, because I learned that the Human Genome Project it took samples from 9 white, young males who were graduate students, and that was the basis for the iconic human genome. And obviously, it didn't, it left a lot to be desired, yes. So it's wonderful that you have been so complete in your work. And talking about the other areas, you referenced the speed. So my question to all of you is, how can we harness AI in all of its manifestations, many that I have no idea about, and all of which are just words to me, but digital twins, synthetic data, all these kinds of concepts for several different areas. My obsession is women's health, but the same is true for different ethnicities, for example, or sort of less represented people. And this is not politics for me. I'm a physician by training. This is just good medicine. And at the end of the day, you've all alluded to this, this is our striving to the goal of personalized or precision medicine. And my overarching question is, what can AI do to get us to that goal faster? And also somebody, please address the pitfalls and the potential negative consequences that if we aren't careful. But can we strive to that? Because what I've always heard is, yes, we can do this in cancer and in rare disease because it's small populations and it's not a huge cost, but we can't do this on a societal level because it would cost so much and it would just take so much time and so on and so forth. But we've just spent the whole morning hearing about how AI is transforming everything. Can it really transform healthcare in this context as well?
I would start with, if you look at the technology, Moore's law applies typically in technology. So we all would have seen the DeepSeek announcement. The cost of AI is coming down for sure. The ability to train models is getting easier. We believe very strongly that you will have bespoke models for specific purposes. So you might have a model like the one I mentioned for diabetes. You might have I'm sure you do, genomics models. So specific foundation models, they're much less expensive to run. They're as effective as large language models that you probably use every day. They're much more effective on the carbon footprint, and therefore the cost profile will continue to come down. There are, when you think about huge scale data sets, quantum computing is coming very fast. We announced the first large-scale error-free quantum computer just in the last few days, will be 2029. That makes a whole range of different scenarios possible that are either expensive or just take too long to compute. We think the first scenarios that quantum will address are problems of biology and chemistry, ergo health, and the addition to the UK economy and other economies by inference is very significant. So we think as a combination of new opportunity and productivity, around 7% of GDP, that's hundreds of billions of dollars. And if you look at the effectiveness of quantum, we think it will improve by about 54%. The effectiveness in pharma specifically of running all of those trials and discovery programs. So huge opportunities from a tech perspective, and cost is coming down very quickly.
We have just a little bit of time left. Would you mind opining on the same, are we driving towards personalized medicine in a realistic way?
Yes, because we're already using it in the clinic. There are therapeutics which have already been approved. These include CAR-Ts, they include mRNA therapies, they include a number of other technologies, and there is an enormous pipeline sitting behind this. And we have clinical pathways which are being currently designed in order to improve the uptake, even to and including individualized approaches, which the Rare Therapies Launchpad in the UK that I chair is working with the MHRA, government, and others to design. We in Genomics England are working on our own design for multimodal AI models, which has its challenges of data representation, cloud, compute, and others, but it does return results faster, and we work with partners from around the world, InstaDeep, NVIDIA, and others, to make this work and drive directly into the clinic. We are pioneers in this, but we see it elsewhere in the world, and we collaborate on it. This is the frontier. And it's going to move fast because this area of technology does, and we're dragging healthcare with us. It is incredibly exciting.
It's wonderful. And Sophie, in the very short time we have, among women too, there are many differences, ethnic differences, to name a few. How are you addressing that within your women-focused healthcare delivery?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I just a couple of minutes, but I'd love to contribute a yes and to everything that's been discussed on the panel. There's a huge amount that AI can do to enable precision medicine, but AI independent of data is nothing. And there are so many data sets that we don't have that consider gender, that consider ethnicity, that consider other differences. To take the example earlier of the UK Biobank, an absolutely amazing data set. I've used it myself, and it's really supported innovation. It's a very white data set. And so what can we do to capture data that enables development of sort of technologies, including AI, that is truly inclusive? And a big part of that, I think, is the responsibility of the medical community to continue to build bridges with people of all backgrounds, but also the developers of these technologies. They certainly tend to be of a particular demographic, and there are some fantastic books about how that has led to some really, really terrible, really exclusive innovations. So for us, so for one example, we've recently launched a partnership with the NHS, with Guy's and Tommy's, and we're working to deliver healthcare for 1,000 women who are employed by Guy's and Tommy's in the NHS. There are two groups within that. One is doctors. They all have their doctorates. They're very highly educated. They're very technologically literate. Another group is very much less so. And what we're learning is that even the really fundamental technologies, the digital interfaces to these algorithms that we've developed, they're not fit for purpose for people who don't have a strong healthcare background. They don't know what all of these different medical terminologies mean. So we're really intentional about making sure that we can do everything possible, one, to support the development of these data sets so that the really interesting technologies are accessible and they're impactful for everyone, but also the really fundamental ways that sort of patients will interact with these technologies. Again, they're also accessible for everyone so that we're supporting every woman, not just the easy women to support.
Wonderful. So I think the conclusion is tech is having a very important and impressive and powerful effect on healthcare, and we can all hope to have better healthcare soon. And I want to make a plug for women's health and say it's a huge, open, uncharted, and underinvested area for investment. And please add that to your areas of focus as you go forward. And thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, audience. We've enjoyed being here. Thank you.